And that's just a fact. The evacuation did not go right. I mean, the rule with the Secret Service is cover the protectee and evacuate. There could be another person in the crowd. So if you don't jump on the protectee, you could be looking at multiple shooters. So at least that part, the guys there, stepped up there. But the failure here is absolutely catastrophic. And I got to tell you, the Secret Service should be very careful. I can tell you and absolutely confirm from the horse's mouth, from multiple people, not just one, there have been repeated requests to increase the security footprint around not just the residences of Donald Trump, but the body itself. And they have been rebuffed. Like I said, I can tell you actual quotes. The Secret Service directors completely failed and candidly should resign today. Kim Cheadle has failed Donald Trump and honestly failed Joe Biden too. He's the president right now. Where's the DHS secretary? You're blaming it on manpower? So just to be clear, we're a $4 trillion United States government, and we can't fork over enough money to keep our people alive? And then you're sending out tweets like, oh, this is the best technology we have. Really? To let a sniper 150 yards away from the potential next president shoot a piece of his ear off? That's your victory lap?
Wow.
Give me a break, man.
Mandy, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Paul. I'm great, but I'm having the same reaction you are as we're listening to. That was Dan Bongino's Fox hit. Yeah, it is so unbelievable what happened, and I think, as he characterized it, catastrophic failure is absolutely correct. And now it's up to Congress and oversight to figure out exactly what happened and exactly went wrong with putting President Trump literally in someone's crosshairs and almost losing his life.
You've been around him. You served on his staff. If anybody, I don't care if it's a soldier who has been under fire like this, had a little post-traumatic feelings about it, to the point when you get back up against those people in front of a lot of people like that now, how do you think that's going to affect this guy? Because he's not an ordinary person, to be honest with you.
He's not. And if anyone had a question about that, I mean, I think his innate reaction to being shot at, ducking, getting up, and then putting his fist up and saying fight. I think the thing about President Trump is that he's been fighting fights his whole life. He's always been going in where he was facing mega institutions, people trying to undercut him, and that he is different, but he was literally built for this. And I actually think it's energized him. It certainly energized the Republican Party, the conservative movement. And I mean, I'm headed to the convention right now, and the folks that I've talked to who are there right now, it is next level. But I do want to clarify, it's next level in a we've got to fix this country kind of way, because we care. We love President Trump. It's not about increasing rhetoric or increasing anger or anything along those lines. It's just everyone is hyper-focused, and I believe the president is as well.
I hope we have people on both sides who look at this and say, okay, now we have the manifestation and the tangible evidence that DEI may have led us to a catastrophe. And I say that not being chauvinistic or anything else. I would say the same thing is if we had a mandatory rule that starting next year you had to put women who are 5'7" in the NBA or the NFL. There is just, if I'm going to be protected on one of those iconic shots in some of these photos, you see this woman who's got to be 5'7" trying to hug and protect the president, which if there were multiple snipers embedded around that location, and Crooks wasn't the only one, there was a perfect headshot because she just wasn't tall enough. And then there was almost a Chinese fire drill, Keystone Cops, trying to get him into the vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, you're pointing out the obvious, that DEI doesn't change biology. And when you're talking about any position, I mean, I don't care if you're talking about the security of the President of the United States or who's going to run XYZ Corporation, it should be based on who's going to do the best job. We were built on a meritocracy that is so fundamentally American, and it's in recent years that there's been this push to to clarify equity because it makes the left feel good. And people have been going along with it, and these are very, very serious consequences. President Trump was almost on the receiving end of those very serious consequences yesterday. So this DEI nonsense, it's got to stop, especially when you were talking about the safety of any person and especially the safety of the person who is the front runner for President of the United States.
Well, and also, there was some tape, and I have one of the sound bites here of Ms. Cheadle basically saying that by a certain date, our objective to transform the Secret Service is to have a minimum of 30% women. That's not aging well.
No, it's not at all. And this is this entire administration's approach to every single policy. They say the same thing with regard to emissions reductions. We're going to achieve X% reduction by X date, and then the consequences are high cost energy and inflation that the American people are having to deal with. That's on the economic side. In this instance, it truly is putting the front runner for the President of the United States in harm's way.
When you were watching this real time, I know you probably looked at it in a different way too, but a lot of people were kind of forgetting about his family, what they were thinking. Melania issued a report or a press statement in the past 24 hours, and she did a great job on that one. She humanized her husband, and it was good. I don't know if you read it yet.
I did. I was reading it out loud to my husband, Surya. We were in the car, and I just kept crying. It was so heartfelt, and I do think you characterize it correctly. It humanizes him in a way to see not just President Trump, Donald Trump, as a human, but she makes this point. Any politician is also somebody's husband, father, mother, wife,
right.
And we've got to start looking at our leaders in a humanistic way.
Speaking about, and I asked you earlier, I said, what do you think this has done to Donald Trump? But there was one report that Trump almost wanted to fight them and stay on and continue the rally. And I think people said it did make him scared, made him mad, and you could see that when he kept saying, fight, fight, fight.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. I was thinking that yesterday, because when you saw him get off the plane, when he finally got to, I believe it was Milwaukee is where he touched down, and he ended up in Bedminster. But nonetheless, when his plane touched down to where he was going, someone said, "Oh, he looks super energized," and I was like, "Well, that's because he didn't do his full 2-hour rally. He probably had all this extra adrenaline and energy." And I was like, "I bet he wanted to go out there and finish the rally because he loves those. I mean, he feeds off of the energy, and he also understands." When you go to these rallies, I don't know if you've been, Paul, but I think I know you have. That you're there for many, many hours before President Trump actually gets on stage, and so he understands that. And he wanted to deliver that and provide that for the people who had literally gone out of their way to come listen to him speak.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize this. It was only like 6 or 7 minutes into the speech when the shots were fired. But so many different questions, and I know you and your husband probably were asking some questions about, who knew what, when did they know it, and there is, and we talked about this a little earlier, I don't want to be redundant, but there is a command center for the Secret Service, and they're supposed to be all communicating to him or her, and they communicate to everybody else, but you got to explain where the crowd saw that, knew that there was a shooter. The snipers apparently had him in his sight at least a minute or two prior to him shooting, and there was no reaction from the Secret Service on stage to get the president down beneath that podium where the stuff is, from my understanding, bulletproof on some of the banding and some of the decorations down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think time will tell, and that's why this investigation is going to be so critical, not just about vindication for why President Trump was exposed, but protecting anyone else who is the President of the United States from being in this position again. It is so upsetting to the psyche of the American people that any president could be in that dire, in that position of violence and danger. And so, yeah, I do think it's this different frequency. I was listening to someone talk about this. It reminded them of 9/11, where one of the problems leading up was you have all these agencies that are assessing this threat, but they aren't talking to one another about
There
it.
you go.
And then there's a crack, and then you see what happens. So it's likely something along those lines, certainly on the communication front. But there's more to it, and we'll find out in the coming days.
I asked Mike Hurst about this. What do you think this is going to do to the delivery or to what they suggest that Joe Biden does going forward on how he attacks the former president? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that when we return in just a moment with Mandy. J.T. Mitchell joins us coming up at 8:35. Mandy is live in Milwaukee. Back with more coming up next. We are back with Mandy, and we do thank you so very, very much. I know you're busy. By the way, the president, former President Donald Trump, got a big endorsement. What was it? Late yesterday, early this morning. You know who that was? By the way, a big endorsement.
Oh, Elon? Elon's endorsement?
No, that was big. As a matter of fact, he did get. Elon said the last time. He said the last time we had a candidate this tough was Theodore Roosevelt. The words of Elon Musk, which I thought was pretty darn good. No, he's a little bit younger. A guy by the name of Arch Manning. Texas
Awesome.
Longhorn quarterback just endorsed Donald Trump for president. So I think it was earlier today or late last night. I want you to hear this one because, and I know it's going to make your hair stand up right before you go into a meeting. That's not what you need. But this is George Stephanopoulos and Martha Raddatz.
President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
Well, absolutely, George. We were just looking back this morning at some of the things that former President Trump has said. He warned last March of potential death and destruction if he were charged by the Manhattan District Attorney. Our country is being destroyed as they tell us to be peaceful. Trump in January warned of bedlam in the country if the criminal charges against him succeeded. And, of course, in March, he said, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That will be the least of it. He said he was partly joking and that was taken out of context. But those are indeed his words. And you have heard it from supporters as well. And supporters are certainly, in some parts, angry. And let's remember January 6th. In so many ways for the campaign, January 6th will probably be in the background after yesterday's event. This is a very difficult time for this campaign. I'm sure this week in Milwaukee that President Trump will highlight this, and President Biden is going to have to figure out how to go forward with his campaign and what exactly they say.
If there is such thing as malpractice in journalism, she just committed it, Mandy.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what the corporate media does, is they lie for the left. They do it all the time. I mean, just about everything she said and using Donald Trump's words. The bloodbath, for example, he was talking about cars and the economy, and yet they continue to take that, what would happen economically with regard to EV mandates and things along those lines. So they just continue to do what has led to this situation. Meanwhile, they ignore and they don't care about the fact that Biden's entire campaign is built off of convincing the American people that if Donald Trump is elected, it's the end of life as we know it.
Yep.
It is massive extremism, and to the point that you have people publishing newspaper or magazines with President Trump's face superimposed with Hitler, and they call him Hitler all the time. So, again, it's so frustrating. The left always wants to bail out the Democrats. They're doing it again already. I think they're going to feign some sort of concern, but then they're going to get right back at it because at the end of the day, they do not want President Trump and the people around him in power because they know that now when we come in there, we have experience and we are hyper-focused and we know how to fix this system.
Maybe they are right when they use the word existential because that means the end of existence and the successes of Donald Trump would end their party, and I think that's what they're worried about, the end of their party, not so much of the end of America.
Yeah, Paul, that's right. I mean, the left, whenever they talk about the end, they're just talking about the end of their political power because that is their entire world to them. You're exactly right.
You know, Mandy, you cannot get a group of psychologists in here. You cannot say without any certainty at all that this didn't have an effect on a 20-year-old kid, a young adult, 20 years old, on deciding to pull the trigger on what could be the next president of the United States of America and a former president, because he's hearing all of these things. He's hearing all of this, and don't tell me they don't have some responsibility to all the way to the president himself just the day before this happened.
I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Trump is a threat to this nation.
They have responsibility.
Yeah, you keep saying things like that, calling him Hitler. He's a threat to the nation. It's going to be the end of life as we know it. I worked on something called Project 2025. It is a policy handbook, but the left is characterizing it as if we're going to take away women's ability to just live their day-to-day life on their own. I mean, they put these extremes out there. And yeah, I mean, I think especially a young kid who just came up through the public school system that has really been focused on making kids activists instead of independent, educated thinkers, of course it's going to have some sort of impact. And let's not forget, Republicans have been attacked in all three branches of our government. Justice Kavanaugh, there was an attempted assassination. Steve Scalise and the Republican members at the congressional baseball game practice attempted assassinations. They almost killed Leader Scalise. And now you have this against our president. The left talks about it, but it's we, the Republican Party and conservatives, that are on the receiving end of their violence, their actual life-threatening violence.
For all of the family left back here in the state, and there's a large segment of this audience that have people in Milwaukee right now within the confines of that center, what's the security look like?
Wait, sorry, Paul, it cut out just a second. What was that last thing you said?
I said, what does security look like? Or do you feel pretty safe within the confines of there and in the city when you get out and walk around?
Oh, yeah, I do. I mean, the security's tight. It was always going to be tight. I think everyone's going to be a little bit more on edge, but that's been the case for anyone who has been a part of the MAGA movement. You know, everywhere you go, if you have to do the assessment. Am I going to wear my hat or not? Because if I wear my hat or I wear my pants or my shirt that says MAGA or Trump, you could potentially be inviting some sort of violence. So everyone who's here understands that, but they've been doing a good job on security. I feel safe. I think they're going to amp it up, and we're going to be here hyper-focused on formally nominating President Trump to lead the Republican Party to victory this November.
One final question here, and I ask Mike this one. What do you think this is going to do to the scriptwriters and the tempo of Joe Biden answering questions off the cuff? You know what I think? I think the words, the little thing he says, well, anyway. I think that's probably double in times he repeats that. Every time he gets off the track to attack something, he's going to have this in his brain now, and he's going to stop and say, well, anyway.
Yeah, well, and he doesn't have to worry about it because the corporate media is going to tell the public what he was actually trying to say. They always bail him out, so it doesn't really matter. But I will say, I think Biden's team, they're going to try to lay low a little bit, but then they're going to come right back at it, and they're going to try to shift all of this, blame it on Republicans. But the good news is the American people have seen the truth. They saw with their own eyes. The veil has been lifted for so many people. And, again, I think that that's just going to – it already has created momentum here.
All right, J.D. Vance, is that your pick? You think that's going to be the nominee?
Oh, yeah.
You do? Oh, not a dark horse, not anybody else you think is going to be J.D. Vance?
Oh, J.D., yeah, I think, well, he certainly seems to have the lead, and that would make a ton of sense. I was talking with Surya yesterday as far as vice president. We need someone who's really, really, really strong, someone who's going to be able to withstand the major change that the American people are going to vote for and support the president's goal. And J.D., in my opinion, of the three front runners, he seems to be the one that is the most capable.
Yeah, and geographically, he brings something to the table, too, on that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. extremely important state. And, you know, I think that's Ohio from a strategic perspective.
Yes.
I know Doug Burgum's
Yes.
in the running too. He's great, but that his state is less important when it comes to the electoral outcomes.
Mandy, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it so very much. Stay safe.
Thank you, and good to be with you.
You got it. Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA chief under the in the